What is up, guys? Welcome back to another quick episode here on the Fantasy Fellowship channel. My name's Kyle. February 28th, we got some combine stuff happening tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. So we're going to get you guys a quick tight end video, the rookie class, the tight end class this year. I've already covered quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. I'll probably link those in the description, or you guys can find them anywhere, on the Fantasy Fellowship channel or on the website here. But we're going to look at the 2024 rookie tight end class. We got some advanced data to share with you guys. So it's all here. I believe there's a link in the description to get you guys to the correct article too. But hey, I did some new update branding here on the website. So you come on down here, you can find the rookie tight ends, advanced data, and yeah, we're gonna hop right into it. And if you haven't watched the other videos, the whole idea of this is we're going to open up some data. We're going to look at some of the advanced metrics, and we're going to look at I think I did 20 tight ends in this class. And we're just going to look and see how they stack up against each other in a variety of stats. So the stats that we're looking at for tight end are right here: yards per route run, yards after catch per reception. I got, I think, 3 or 4 different PFF grades, average depth of target, avoided tackles, drop rate, and then I kind of created one, pressure plus sacks allowed rate. So that's an interesting one for blocking with tight ends. So we have 20 tight ends in the data sample. And what I do is, because I have a data sample of 20 in the article, I'm going to show you guys the top 5 tight ends and the bottom 5 tight ends in each metric. If you guys want access to the full data study, you guys can head on over to the Patreon. I did upload this morning here. It's all right here. You come in and you can get this PDF, and then I will give you guys a sneak peek of what the PDF entails and give you guys a full data sample. So let's get right into it. This is at the top of the page here. You have the 2020 or the 2023 stats tab. So Brock Bowers, tight end 1. This is mock draft database, MDD. That stands for mock draft database. I use them as like a consensus ranking just to kind of show you guys, oh, Brock Bowers is the tight end 1 in most mock drafts in the consensus rankings right now. So he is the guy. You can also filter by fantasy points per game. You got all the receptions, targets, yards, touchdowns in here. Brock Bowers, tight end 1. Jatavian Sanders, tight end 2. Cade Stover, tight end 3. Jaheim Bell, I'm not sure which one it is, but out of Florida State. Theo Johnson from Penn State. Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. Jared Wiley, TCU. Brevin Spanford out of Minnesota, Dallin Holker, Colorado State, and AJ Barner. So those are your top 10 guys. And like I said, I do have a list of 20 total tight ends in here. So real quick, I'm just going to tap fantasy points per game and show you guys who the top tight ends were last year. Brock Bowers, the clear tight end 1 last year. He played in 10 games, 16.37 fantasy points per game at the tight end spot. I'd take that in a heartbeat in the NFL fantasy football leagues. But Dallin Holker, number 2, Colorado State. He's a lesser known player, but very productive. 105 targets last year, only 64 receptions. So I'm not sure what the QB play was there. I've watched him a little bit, but 14.72 points per game. And then you got the other guys here. So check that stats tab out. We're going to hop right into the actual data here. So starting off with yards per route run. This is a really good stat to measure how productive a receiver is when he's on the field. Tight end number 1, Brock Bowers. 271 routes ran last year, 717 yards, 2.65 yards per route run. Coming in at number 2, Eric All out of Iowa. Now, he didn't run a lot of routes, 114 routes, but almost 300 yards, and he did post a really nice 2.62 yards per route run, which is just about as equal to Brock Bowers. So smaller, roughly half the sample size of Brock Bowers' routes, but he was up there and he can be an athletic tight end. We'll watch for his name to see if he pops in any of the other metrics here. Cade Stover coming in at number 3, 2.04 yards per route run. Ben Sinnott, 2.02 yards per route run. Jaheim Bell, don't know which one to say, 1.97 yards per route run. And then we get to the bottom 5 guys. So there's your Isaac Rex out of BYU, AJ Barner out of Michigan, Brevin Spanford out of Minnesota, Thomas Yasmin, Utah, and Tip Raymond. So these guys are more, I think, blocking tight ends, but we'll get into it. So that's your yards per route run stat. Let's move on to yards after catch per reception. So I like this stat quite a bit because it's like, what can you do with the ball in your hands after you've made the catch? I want guys that can move a little bit and pick up extra fantasy points and yards and first downs and things like that. So tight end 1 here, Devin Culp out of Washington. Now, he had a small sample size here, only 16 receptions on 23 targets, 208 yards. The ADOT's in there as well, and I also put the yards per route run. But his yards after catch per reception was 9.14. So small sample size. We'll see what he can do. I'm not sure if he's at the combine, but we'll watch for his measurables. Brock Bowers coming in at number 2. No surprise here, 8.7 yards after catch per reception. Thomas Yasmin, 8.6. Jaheim Bell, 8.1. Jatavian Sanders, 7.7. So that's the first time we've mentioned Jatavian Sanders. He's the tight end consensus number 2 in this class here. So solid year last year, 45 receptions on 67 targets, 682 yards. He didn't have the greatest yards per route run. He was just under 2. He just missed the top 5 list. He was at 1.86 yards per route run, and 5th was 1.97. So he's decent in yards per route run, a little bit stronger at the yards after catch per reception. So he's averaging about 7.7 yards after those catches. Guys on the bottom of the list here, Brevin Spanford out of Minnesota, Theo Johnson, which was kind of disappointing. I liked Theo Johnson, AJ Barner, Trey Knox, and Jack Westover. Now, let's go. I'm going to show you guys. We'll do the sneak peek at the Patreon here. So and it's early. It's still end of February here. In March, I'm going to be creating a new PDF that kind of displays all this information a little bit better for you guys. But everything that we're looking at on the website, I have here. You just have the full data sample. So it starts off with the stats up at the top of the page. You move on to the next. And we'll get to this at the end, but this is the score metric system that I use at the end. This is grades. Let me see what else we got here. This is your yards per route run. And if we go down here to yards after catch per reception, you can see the full set. So Mason Fairchild coming in at number 6, Isaac Rex number 7, Cade Stover with a decent one here. Other names to mention, Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State here, 6.8 yards after catch per reception. There was Eric All, who had the nice yards per route run, but he was kind of lower with a 6.1. Again, small sample there for him, though. And then Dallin Holker. So he was the guy that had a bunch of volume, not so good after catch here. So he might just be kind of a volume type receiver. But that's what you get when you guys go to the Patreon, and you guys can download that data and get the full data set. But we're going to go to avoided tackles next. And Brock Bowers coming in at number 1. He had 56 receptions. He did have a couple carries mixed in here too. So he did avoid 18 tackles, 32.14%. So basically 1 out of every 3 guys he would make miss. Jaheim Bell coming in at number 2. I like to see that. 39 receptions for him, 12 avoided tackles for a good 30%. Ben Sinnott, Tanner McLaughlin, and Dallin Holker. So Holker didn't get a lot of yards after reception, but he did post a pretty nice avoided tackles rate. So I kind of like that in him. And then guys here at the bottom of the list, Isaac Rex, Jack Westover, Jared Wiley, Theo Johnson, and Mason Fairchild. And I was at Jared Wiley and Theo Johnson. They didn't pop in a lot of the metrics here as we'll go through it, but very low on avoided tackles. So, and they had decent samples too here, 47 receptions for Jared Wiley, 34 for Theo Johnson, and both at 5% and 6% respectively. So avoided tackles, I want a tight end that can make some people miss and get me extra fantasy points. So I like that stat. Now, average depth of target, I did not count this in my overall grade in the player, but I do like this stat because it lets you know where they're being used on the field. So number 1 on the list with 38 targets, Mason Fairchild, 10.8, a little bit of a field stretcher here. So you had a nice yards per reception. Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State, 10.1 average depth of target. He had a productive season, 48 yards, 669, or 48 receptions, 669 yards and 6 TDs. There's Jatavian Sanders, so that's a good stat there, 9.8 yards on his targets. And, coming in at number 3, about 10 yards per target. I think that's a strong play for his numbers. Dallin Holker, Colorado State, about 9 average depth of target. And then there's Eric All with his 8.7. Guys at the bottom of the list, we kind of keep mentioning these names, but Jack Westover, Trey Knox, Brevin Spanford, Thomas Yasmin, and Tip Raymond. So, 9 to 10 yards per target is a solid number to be at. I can't remember where Brock Bowers ended up in this list here, but he probably was just outside the top 5. Looking at PFF grade. So this is just the offensive grade, which takes into account, route running, pass blocking, run blocking, and just overall production. Brock Bowers, the number 1 tight end, 84.4 offensive grade from PFF. AJ Barner coming in at number 2 with an 82.2 grade, Ben Sinnott, 82 grade, Cade Stover, Jatavian Sanders. Those are your top 5 PFF graded receivers in 2023. Guys at the bottom of the list, Theo Johnson, Isaac Rex, Tip Raymond, Thomas Yasmin, and Brevin Spanford. And Spanford, man, not looking good for his profile. He's been at the bottom of, I think, every single list so far, and Mock Draft Database has him as the tight end 8 right now, which is a little bit head-scratching. Looking at the pass blocking grades, and again, like you don't, your fantasy tight end doesn't really necessarily need to pass block, but I think it's an important thing that's gonna, be incorporated into this tight end's draft stock. So can he block, when the team's throwing the ball? Thomas Yasmin, number 1 pass block grade with a 74.7. Mason Fairchild, Ben Sinnott, McAllen Castles, and Brock Bowers. So the only receiving threat that we like here is Brock Bowers. I'm glad to see that he's a top 5 pass blocker. And Ben Sinnott, another positive for him being the tight end's consensus number 6. He can pass block a little bit. Guys at the bottom of the list where there's a little bit of concern, Theo Johnson, Brevin Spanford, and Jaheim Bell. All 3 of those guys struggled to pass block. Run blocking. So all the guys here, they didn't really get a lot of pass blocking opportunities. Run blocking, they had a better opportunity. So I'm putting more emphasis on their run blocking grade than their actual pass blocking grade, because when the tight end's in there, if they're not running a route, they should be blocking on a run. So AJ Barner, the number 1 run block grade player here out of Michigan, 81.4, the only player with an 80+ grade. Ben Sinnott, number 2. Jack Westover, finally a top 5. And Ben Culp, finally a top 5. And Brevin Spanford actually got a decent run blocking grade, 66.4. Guys at the bottom of the list, Cade Stover, that's a little bit of a head scratcher there, 54.4 grade. And then Jared Wiley down there at 48 grade here. But there you go, run blocking. I believe I got one more grade for you, the PFF route grade. Brock Bowers, clear away the number 1 player, 87.1. Ben Sinnott, number 2 with 81 grade. Cade Stover, Jatavian Sanders, and Eric All, top 5 route runners by PFF. Bottom 5 route runners, Devin Culp, Isaac Rex, Tip Raymond, Thomas Yasmin, and Brevin Spanford. Now, the drop percentages, not my favorite stat to look at because sample size, right? Like Thomas Yasmin, 12 targets, 8 receptions. He didn't have a drop, but he's going to get a 0% drop grade because he didn't, So, but guys that are impressive here, like Jatavian Sanders, he had 45 catches, 67 targets, 0 drops last year. Same thing with McLaughlin and Cade Stover. These guys both over 50 targets. So I'm more impressed with McLaughlin, Stover, and Jatavian Sanders' numbers here. Yasmin and Ryman, sure, they didn't drop a pass, but small samples. Guys that I'm a little bit concerned about, McAllen Castles, AJ Barner, Jaheim Bell, Eric All, Brevin Spanford, all these guys ranked pretty low. And Brevin Spanford had a really bad drop rate, 26.5% here. And a decent sample size on 46 targets. Jaheim Bell, another sample size worth a note here, 52 sample size, about 9.3% drop rate. So we'll see if those guys can fix that problem at the next level. Dropping is, a natural ability, soft hands, that kind of stuff. But you can fix that. That's one thing that you can improve just with, hand-eye coordination and just paying attention to it. So either way, we'll move on to the next one here. And this was a stat that I kind of made up on my own. I found how many pressures, I found how many sacks these players allowed here. And then I also put in their snaps at the passing and running situations. But you have pressures, you have sacks. I tallied those up and then divided it by these total amount of blocking snaps that they did. 5 players didn't allow a single pressure or a sack. Bowers, Culp, Holker, Theo Johnson, Thomas Yasmin. Now, obviously, you can't allow a sack or a pressure on a run snap. So the pass blocking sample is not as great for these players, but zero pressures and sacks is an achievement. Now, the guys that we're actually worried about, they're on the ones on the bottom of the list. So you have Jatavian Sanders down here on 57 pass block attempts. He allowed 7 pressures and sacks for a 12.28% rate. Eric All, pretty bad rate here, even though he was listed as a good run blocker. He only had 3 pass block attempts because I don't think he's very good at it. And then Jaheim Bell to give up 4 pressure sacks on 23 pass block attempts. That's a little bit of a concern. So that is weighted here in the system. And then the final score column here. So what I did is all the metrics that we looked at, I think besides ADOT, I ranked these players 1 through 20. And then I tallied up their score at the end to see who had the lowest or the best rating. And it's Brock Bowers by a mile. He was first in fantasy points per game, first in yards per route run, second in yards after catch per reception, first in avoided tackles. He was 10th in drop percentage, but that was his lowest metric. Offensive grade first, route grade first, pass block grade fifth, run block grade seventh, and then the pressure to sack rate, he's technically tied for first. But overall, Brock Bowers is the tight end one in this class. I'm not so sure Jatavian Sanders is the clear tight end too, though. He struggled in a lot of things here. Avoided tackles was not his best metric. Ben Sanat actually came in as my tight end too, just in this metric. And it's not the perfect scoring system. I understand that, but it's just a way for us to kind of look at the advanced data and see who's popping in the system. So Ben Sanat came out as my tight end 2, Cade Stover, tight end 3, Jatavian Sanders, tight end 4, and then there's Dallin Holker, who was very productive. But man, his offensive grade 12, route grade 13, run block grade 12. I think he's just going to be an okay tight end at the next level. So there's not a lot of tight ends to like in this class. A lot of tight ends to not like, that's for sure. But there you go. That is the 2024 tight end class. Hopefully you guys go check out the Patreon and continue to watch my videos. Check out the website. We got a lot of stuff coming on there. It's February 28th. Tomorrow, February 29th. Happy leap year. I'm going to get a update to the rookie rankings and the dynasty rankings. So stay tuned for that this weekend. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.